all. We are very happy today to invite Mr. Ranjeeb Sarma to speak to us about the CSR and sustainability initiatives of Marks and Spencers. Now, Marks and Spencers is a name that all of us know. So it will be very interesting for us to know how M&S connects with society. A brief introduction to Ranjeeb. He has been working in Marks and Spencer since 2015. He's currently head of compliance, CSR, and planning. Now we'll unpack some of these as we go along because it sounds a little mysterious. Ranjeeb comes to M&S with a lot of experience in this sector, having worked with Solidaridad, Mother Care, Gap, Walmart, etc. It's a very interesting combination in his academic credentials. He's an LLB from Delhi University and a master's in human rights. So I suppose what you bring to your job is a combination of heart and mind to achieve social sustainability and environmental sustainability. So that's a very interesting combination. So welcome, Ranjeeb. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay, Ranjeeb, as I said, your designation is very interesting. You head 3 verticals, it seems to me: compliance, CSR, and Plan A. Now, compliance is very technical and legal. Let it be for today. I would like to understand the contours of your other 2 roles or portfolios. The first of which is CSR, and the second is planning. Now, planning is, we'll leave it as the mystery, we'll go to it last. So as far as Marks and Spencer's CSR is concerned, what is your approach? What are your programs? I'm aware that you do work in health, in community institutions, and livelihoods, but if you could just elaborate.
Thank you, Meena ji. It has been an absolute pleasure to connect today. And you rightly said, those 3 different verticals essentially also signifies what I have been doing all my life. So again, apologies. I'm actually in a workplace setting, so people come and go, and then there's a paucity of meeting rooms. But I'll try to
it's
be
very
mute.
good to see people in today's COVID day, to see a full office. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, as you rightly said, compliance is a little intricate in terms of, because I look at supply chain. So Marks and Spencer is a UK-based company, and although we have a big footprint in India, 95 stores and growing. And although in India we are looking at expanding to even tier 2 cities, but essentially the office in which I sit, I actually look at the whole supply chain dimension, and compliance comes part of it, because we are actually sourcing from around 100 suppliers. We don't own them, but we have contracts with them, so we source from them. I'm also looking after Srilanka also, so also it gives me a very interesting dimension and compare between 2 different countries. Coming to CSR, now CSR is a Indian law, and but we have been doing it through our business. So essentially I think when the CSR law came in, I think, how long is it, Minaji? I think 3-4 years ago.
2014.
Exactly. And so there was a mad rush, and then people were not knowing, and then a lot of people were actually doing philanthropy, and some of it actually got transferred. I mean, the likes of Tata's, although we work with Tata's, they supply to us. The likes of Arvind, the likes of Aditya Birla. I mean, they are big companies, and then they work with us as well. But essentially, what we thought of, our strategy was more about that if we are actually looking at the whole supply chain perspective, how can our activities actually link back to the supply chain work which we are doing with our suppliers? Because of course there are certain prohibition within the act that you cannot work on your supply chain, or work with your people directly. But we thought, like, a good entry point would be the community, and everything actually revolves around the people who works in our supply chain, essentially the workers. And capacity building them, supporting them, has been the center stage. But the approach, I would actually take it to the next dimension, how we came about what we're doing. So essentially today, if you look at our entry point, it's essentially health, and then livelihood, well-being, and then just transition. So just transition, I'll come up when we actually talk about planning. And how do we came about it? So what we did was, we actually tied up with an international organization, and then we did a risk profiling of different countries. And we said, okay, fine, if you have a footprint in India, what are the likely challenges, from an India perspective, uh, which will actually, like, kind of like, might aid us, or like, come as an obstacle. And of course, as a social responsibility that we are working from the country. So in India, there are certain themes came up, and one of the important theme came up in the form of gender equality. So that was the cross-cutting feature, because we also spend business money to upkeep our supply chain, and we also thought of leveraging our CSR funds to actually, like, look at the same theme, but work on the community. So it was a very interesting link. So that was the approach.
And what exactly is the shape of your programs, and where are they? Is it essentially in Gurgaon, and why Gurgaon?
Well, I think because we are headquartered in Gurgaon, so that's why Gurgaon, I guess. The outreach is very, very important. But most of our actually supply chain. I mean, and we are one of the transparent suppliers, where, like, everything. If you go to our website, you will find the list of our supply chain. I mean, we source food, we source leather, we source clothing, and these are in different clusters. So major cluster is Delhi NCR. If you talk about our leather supply chain, you see Calcutta, Ambur. If you want to see our other clothing cluster, is in Bangalore. Then we see Tirupur is another cluster. MP is coming up. Ahmedabad is coming up. In an interesting way. But we thought of, like, looking at maybe creating a model. The other cornerstone of our approach was that it's good to actually invest in smaller pilots. So of course, I mean, the CSR intervention which we have done, of course, it's like, it's like 4 years, 5 years now. 2016 we started. Intervention was a simple health intervention, and today we have actually outreach to a level where we are actually open to looking at collaboration also. That is the other part of our strategy, because we did not want to create a special silo, that okay, this is Marks and Spencer, and we are, like, kind of connected to it. We are not. So we thought, like, maybe let us actually create certain interventions in the form of pilots, which is essentially
Ranjib,
right way, like,
I
do
think
the intervention and
your
bring
voice
in that element
got
also.
lost.
So
Yeah, your
okay,
voice
can you hear me
got
now?
lost. So the last bit, if you can just repeat.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
last 2 years have been also a very, very interesting for us, because we actually went through a steep learning curve, and wherein, like, we also, like, brought in our strategy related to the situations that arose because of the COVID. So everything got, like, incorporated today. And then today, that CSR project which we have embarked on, of course we have done multiple projects, but there's one particular project which is worth highlighting, that started in 2016 and still continuing in, but then with different facets. If you start with, I can actually explain it maybe later. But it grew from a simple health intervention, where we said, okay, fine, community needs to be connected to formal healthcare. That was the entry point. Then we realized it was not working. We set up a community clinic. Community clinic uh, came up. Actually, we can't call it a clinic. It was a wellness center. So you had a wellness specialist. Then we thought of like connecting to the sanitation aspect of it. So we did an outreach to the schools. We thought, okay, let's build a mechanism. And also like in the third year we were already like shifting into the rights based approach, looking at migrant workers. And when we actually looked at maybe the plastic recycling part, the hanger recycling part, we were looking at just it as a livelihood plugin, not environment, looking at environment in silo. So a lot of interesting things have been done today, and we are at a stage today that we are open to actually like look at partnerships who would be like willing to partner. And by the way, already our intervention, this model has actually like gone into 43 different places in the form of centers, and and then with Swasti, we have actually become their flagship partners. So we love like investing in newer ideas, newer solutions, and which can be scalable, and taken to the next level.
So essentially, you work in partnership with NGOs on this program.
Absolutely. So essentially, in this particular program, it was a equal partnership. So where we insisted that okay, fine. I mean, we are the funding partner, but at the same time, it would also make sense. Like they also bring in their resources. Okay, apart from the knowledge. So we do not look at them. So there was this more ownership from their side also as an NGO, and from our side also. So every time now, so we have reached a place where we are making joint presentations, for example, to for maybe bigger donors, for example, if they would want to come in, and giving them that space that okay, fine, this is what we have done, this is the model, and then this is how we can actually take it to the next level.
Right.
So this is the
Right.
thought process,
Very interesting. As you said, it's the CSR is an Indian law, so you have a specific CSR program in India. Has this in any way been able to influence Mark and Spencer's anywhere else in the world? This kind of a CSR approach, apart from the Plan A?
Actually, we got the elements of Plan A here. So if okay, I mean, why we call it Plan A? Because we thought we'll put
Okay,
it
let's
there,
let's
and
go to Plan A and come back. Yes, what is Plan A?
we call it Plan A because there's no Plan B. So that was something which was launched way back in '94, in its form, like and today we have reached a level. So it has got three major pillars. So the first pillar, as a responsible retailer, we call it as transforming lives, individuals. So essentially looking at community. Second is caring for the planet. Of course, that is purely related to environment. And the third pillar is again like looking at ensuring our customers are healthy. So that's actually the core. So I mean, we have not started food business in India, but this is essentially like limited to UK, where where we also serve food. So where if you look at our products, they are really like healthy, in terms of their nutritional value, their calorific value. So within these three pillars, we have made around 100 commitments.
At
So
an international.
at an international level, and then so that actually applies to our sourcing strategies. So for example, let's say if we talk about sustainable raw material, so we say 100% by 2019, 100% of our clothing or products, food products will come from sustainable raw material sources. So that's one. The second commitment, and we have already achieved it. For example, today we are 95% Better Cotton Initiative, and then we have fair trade, and so forth. The second is, for example, on gender equality. So gender equality, we have said like by 2025, 25% of our supply chain would have 25% of their workforce in female workforce in the managerial roles. So in fact, as we speak today, a week after today, we will be launching one of the industry-wide program. So again, this is where I would like to draw a correlation of what compliance is. So when we talk about compliance, it's essentially you are looking at the international conventions. Our suppliers need to follow that. So what we have done is we thought like, okay, it's given, as a important UK retailer at a leadership role, it is given that you take care of your supply chain. So how do you want to make it an industry wide impact? So this time we have committed some of our CSR funds to the likes of the sector skill council. So that's where the skilling element comes in. So we thought, okay, fine, I mean, sector council skill council is in the business of building skilling for, let's say, garment workers. So we thought, why don't we also, like, introduce a module which has been funded by Marks and Spencer. It was actually again developed over a period of 5 years with inputs from the industry in partnership with the British government, and also, like, other brands, where, like, the focus was on gender equality, accountability, and responsiveness within the three pillars, with regularity reference being the POSH Act, and how it is actually how the ICC functions in institutional level, and then of course how to sensitize senior management in an institution towards gender equality, and of course, like, how do we engage men, how do we look at gender stereotype. So today it's given that we take care of our supply chain, but how do you make it an industry wide phenomena? That is where we thought of committing our CSR funds. So that's another, like, dimension to what we did, and we also brought that thing also in the community. Now coming back to plan A, so in 94 we devised it. Today the three pillar approach, and it has culminated into the setting up of a ESG committee, which is actually looking at sustainability as a core focus point of our strategy, which will actually, like, be defined at different levels, as a company, and whether through the CSR Act or using our business funds. But it's kind of a cumulative and joint approach.
So it's very interesting. I think this is, a true integration of looking inwards and outwards, in the sense of how you build sustainability within your operations, and also, how shall we say, complement that with CSR. It's truly a complementary kind of approach. And maybe even organizationally, it's been hardwired, in the sense that you as a person are in charge of these three things, which all are hand in hand. But do you face any challenges at the larger organizational level in implementing this?
So I think what happens is, although, like, the CSR model which we created in India, it's called Integrated Community Health and Wellness Program. Now it is called I4V. So this is I4V. We are actually, like, going along with our partner NGO, the Catalyst Group. So it's already replicated in 40 centers, including maybe 3 countries. Okay, so but then that's the initiative of India. Somehow, like, I think the biggest challenge is maybe taking it up, and then we are actually rectifying that, because the what we have actually, what has happened is, like, if you talk about global organizations like us, uh, there has been a trend, and I'll be very, very frank here. What happens is, it's always, if you look at the past, it it was always a top down. It was always something that was designed in global north, implemented in global south, and then it is akin to, I think, most of the international standards also. Even if you look at the ILO conventions, if you look at, because most of the compliance and most of the parameters are designed at that level. So now the question is, how do we take something which is conceptualized in India and make it, like, maybe acceptable outwards. So that is where I think the communication, because we thought, like, fine, because India within itself is a big country. So we thought it's good to, because there's a big gap between companies who are export oriented and maybe homegrown. Apart from I named a few companies like Tata's and the Birlas,
Yeah, the big
but
ones. Yeah.
bulk of the domestic export companies, uh, they are not looking at these aspects. In fact, so much so, like, some of our suppliers, they have different yardsticks if they are supplying to us, or if they're supplying to maybe a domestic brand. So we thought, maybe, instead of, like, okay, I mean, if you look at the international level, certain concepts can go, and we are actually working on it, making them popular. But bulk of it, I think the need of the hour is that, how can we help and support our fellow compatriots, the domestic brands, about how do we ensure, like, the right tenets of the CSR work, whether in the form of CSR, or whether in the form of capacity building of their factories. How do we uphold the rights based approach, the labor rights, which is in, sync with the national law and the international convention, so that
Uh,
we look at the worker well-being, in
yes.
total.
Very interesting that you mentioned the challenges in working with the supply chain. But I'm sure you also have some very good, success stories of, how M&S went in and maybe transformed a whole factory or a manufacturer or a supplier. So if, that would be a very good note to a positive note to kind of end on. So, I'd love it if you would share a few stories like that.
I think I have been in this field from 2005. So that was where I started my journey with that big retailer you mentioned, followed by American brands and British brands. And then, of course, I took a sabbatical, went to the other side, joined an NGO, INGO, which again specialized in supply chain, and then worked in different sectors: fruit sector, salt, garment sector, cotton. So it was a very interesting exposure. So what has happened is, I think it has been a very interesting gradual turnaround. So in 2005, the focus was more on a policing mode. You know, so I remember, like, we would go doing partner audits. So idea was looking at a social audit. So that was 2005. So today, when we sit across, I think it's more about at an engagement level. So when we talk about 35,000 workers trained, in 14 of our factories, in gender equality, that is kind of quite a feat, you know. And then maybe today we are talking about a balanced scorecard, where, like, I think the performance of a supplier, whether in upholding the laws of the land, and also maybe going beyond, you know above and beyond the legal mandate. That also, like, we see some amazing examples. And then coming back to our CSR program, where I think I remember when we started the program, and this is a small little hamlet, if I may use the word hamlet, or it's an urban village near Gurgaon. And the first time when we went for the need assessment, we saw women in ghungat, and today they are in apron. And I think that was the biggest change. And people keep asking me that, how did you convince the men? I mean, because I think every time you look at empowering, so there are people who are not engaged. They generally, like, come in as a, like, what do you call it, obstacle. But I think we engage with the men, convince them that, why it is important, and I took their support. I think in the sense of, like, their blessings. And today I think everybody is at sync. So I think that is the biggest success what we
Lovely.
saw. And the story goes on. It's not the end. Quickly, I'll tell you. I think
Yes.
the environmental part, because I thought of, like, talking quickly about the just transition. So when we actually started the hangar project, so the hangar project is very similar. I mean, it was the same place, right, in
Mm.
that urban village in Haryana. So what we did was, we got all the used hangers from our stores. So
Mhm.
earlier, all these hangers would go all the way to Daman. They will be picked up by a truck by a manufacturer who was essentially a hanger manufacturer, making hangers from virgin plastic. And
Mm.
then he was mandated to actually reuse some of the hangers.
Mm.
So, one, I mean, just imagine, we have 93 or 95 stores all over India. Everything is going to Daman. Look at the level of carbon footprinting we would incur. And then,
Yes.
of course, because the manufacturer will actually look at introducing new hangers instead of reusing the current ones. So it was a big challenge. So what we did was, we said, okay, fine. Wherever we have CSR projects, we recruited women from the community. We set up 2 hanger warehouses in the community. They came up with local, solutions. So
Mhm.
I think 70% of the hangers, they actually got reused by little, and then by this lady. And then, in fact, we generated wages worth around 70 lakhs, saved
Wow.
around I think 1100 metric tons of plastic. And of course, whatever was not non-reusable, we actually gave it we actually invested on a machine which would grind the plastic and also like sent it back for recycling. So which means nothing actually went to the landfill. So,
Absolutely
and
brilliant.
during COVID times, I'm very proud to say all these women, they were actually paid by the NGO.
Hmm.
So they did not go home because the operations were stopped, but they
Hmm.
got their payment.
So basically, you're talking about refurbishing the hangers and maybe giving them to smaller shops and suppliers.
No. The
Hmm.
suppliers, it will go back to our stores.
Oh,
All
it
the
will go
hangers,
back to your
yeah,
stores.
yeah.
Wonderful.
So yeah. So it will be reused. Whatever could not be reused, that will be refurbished, as you said. But whatever could be reused, 70% was reused,
What
and
a
it will
brilliant and innovative solution. Really wonderful.
absolutely. And then this money, this additional money which the NGO made, a percentage of it actually went back to the CSR project. So
Right.
this was also like went a long way in which we were able to actually bring down our level of investment over a period of time, so that that money can be then effectively used in other things.
Yeah, it's
Where,
like one stone and several birds. I mean, you have the environment piece, you have the social piece, and you have the financial piece. So
yeah,
truly, I mean, a multi kind of result for one action. So absolutely
absolutely.
brilliant. Thank you, Ranjeeb. I think one is we talk a lot among Indian companies, but to have an international perspective of how the CSR bit fits into a larger landscape of course, things which are done maybe at headquarters and come here, but how the whole thing can be used and leveraged and made into a complementary synergy so that better results are achieved. And I think this was a very, very revealing discussion. And, I really want to thank you for the insights that you have provided. I know that our viewers will really learn a lot, as did I. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure. Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ranjit.